I'm here with noted pollster and political consultant, former Microsoft executive, and much more, Mark Penn, and also chairman of the Harris Poll, which is why I'm talking to you right now, because you have a new poll out. Mark, nice to see you.
Thank you. I think that during this crisis at the Harris Poll, we're trying to kind of check in 3 times a week to see what the American public is thinking and how moods and attitudes are changing.
Your latest poll says that 1 in 5 Americans want to go back to work once the government says it's all clear. But doesn't that mean 4 out of 5 Americans don't want to go back?
Well, I actually think that people want to go back to work generally. I mean, I think that was kind of those are the people most eager to go to work. So 22%. Now, not everyone is employed. So if you kind of look at it, there's probably 60%. So a third of the workforce is saying, look, I want to get back to work as quickly as possible. Some people are not affected at all, in terms of the work, and some people are affected dramatically. About 80, somewhere between 70 and 80% are saying that their employer has taken some action, related to the virus at this point. But I don't see it as a public reluctant to go back to work. I see it as a public that's they're listening to instructions by and large. They're doing what they can. I think the poll is very clear. They've changed their fundamental activities in fundamental ways in cooperation with the government by and large.
It seems like cruise ships and airlines may have a tougher time recovering, according to some of the work you've done.
Yes, I think people were most reluctant to go back to cruises more than anything else, and to fly. I was actually somewhat surprised at how high the numbers were, whereas people are going to the grocery store today, going to places that would have cruises. People see airports and particularly planes as I was surprised that they really fear that. So the airlines are going to have their job cut out for them. I think the cruise industry has been through this time and time again. They know that they have their job cut out. But I was surprised at about 80% or so that really said they were reluctant to go back very quickly, to fly.
Right. And you also found out that so many people are using technology at home, maybe not surprising there, but just a real explosion of use.
Well, I think that again, there has been an explosive use of technology. As we're on here with the internet, I think America's infrastructure, particularly in the cities, for this was better than anyone expected. I know I'm also CEO of MDC and of the Stagwell Group, and we have around 9,000 people. And so we had to move pretty seamlessly. I know as a former Microsoft executive, I'm quite happy that the Teams program is working as well as it is. We're on Skype now, which is another Microsoft product. These things are all seeing 400%, 600%, 700% increases in usage right now.
Some people are saying that young people are not being as compliant with the recommendations. What did you find?
Yeah, we have found, consistently that young people were chomping, were on the one hand more afraid, right, in some instances than older people were, but also more defiant, in terms of the numbers. I think some of these differences are coming down. I think we saw them in some of the earlier waves. There were pretty stark differences between young people, but I think some of those are disappearing. Where young people had kind of very differing attitudes was mostly on whether or not corporations should be helped out. Young people were the most against, corporations being helped, and older folks were the most supportive or sympathetic to the kind of financial assistance that we expect to occur.
Are Americans concerned about shortages, Mark?
Yes, Americans are definitely concerned about shortages, and And some of that concern, I think, will probably come down, in the next week or two, depending upon what develops. But 80 or 90% are concerned of shortages. Obviously, everyone knows that we've been through the toilet paper, scares and so forth. And we had, I think that was, I'm trying to remember the number one, that was like the second most scary thought about item in terms of shortages. But they, by and large, the majority is concerned that there'll be shortages. I don't think that, I do think actually that there will be fewer shortages than people think.
Wait, if TP was number 2, what was number 1?
I'm trying to remember exactly what was number 1, but TP was only, I'll have to pull that out for you, but TP was number 2.
All right. So to speak, I guess you should say. So what about President Trump? How is his approval rating during all this?
Well, Trump's getting approval of what he's doing in the 60s. Let me just say that on the one hand, people have become increasingly impatient with the overall government, and in the waves of polling, more saying, look, I want the government action now. It should be bigger. But that's different from the Trump approval, which started out mostly on the negative side, is running in the 60s now. I mean, people are very supportive, think that their governors and their locals are doing an even better job. But the truth of the matter is that the president was in a highly polarized situation in which only 10% of Democrats or less would ever approve of anything he did. And that's up to 40%. So the president is reaching across a partisan divide that he's been unable to breach in anything that he has done, through what he's doing now.
And finally, Mark, the president has invited some controversy lately over getting people back to work, wanting people to get back to work. Some people would say too quickly. What is your take on that?
I think, look, the public is looking for leadership. I did an op-ed the other day about a 60-day plan of getting back to work, that it's really about two things: the numbers of what happens to the virus itself, and that might have to be on a community-by-community basis, and the preparations that are made for people to be safe with masks and other things the way they've done in other countries. Public expects things to get back to normal in about 4 months. Right, and the public is going to, I think, look to government in this combination of healthcare people and economists. Look, I worked very closely with President Clinton, and the president has a range of advisors. And a healthcare advisor is always going to be 100%, I want to keep 100% of the people healthy. And the economic advisor is going to be, I want to keep 100% of the people employed, right? And so everybody comes at it with a different perspective. It is the president's job to reconcile those different perspectives and put together a plan with some kind of balance. And I think we've seen the president say, okay, we're going to do what the healthcare folks say. We're going to basically, empower the governors, stay in place in our major occupations, close down huge parts of the economy. But at a certain point, this has to be balanced with what the economists want to do. And that is the job for both the president and the leadership. And genuinely, no individual at the White House can be trusted with that. They all have perspectives that come from the discipline that they know.
Yeah, I think the president was saying 2 weeks now, Mark. And so you feel like 60 days is kind of a responsible middle ground?
Yeah, I think that look, things went down in stages. They're going to have to come up in stages. So a 60-day plan may mean that it's really 120 days before people are, if I look at the polling, wow, people are not going to be comfortable flying here for 3 or 4 months. But the airlines are going to have to come through with a convincing plan in order to say, hey, we can keep you safe on this airplane. They don't have that right now. But I think that you're going to look at work, the workplaces come back, more and more. Then the question of, will schools begin to go back? Then the question is, what will happen, maybe even before that, some leisure activities, and then what will happen with restaurants, right? And so I think it's a stage thing, and I also think that it's premature right now because the numbers are rising. The whole point is, when the numbers start to come down, whether this policy is working, to begin community by community appropriate plan. So I think the president is on a good wavelength, kind of giving people some hope. I think that people were beginning to get, let's cancel everything for the rest of the year. And they know that would be an economic Armageddon if that happened. And I think now things are kind of coming back. Now, I have offices in China and Korea, across, and those offices are back 100%. Right. So they were out 30 days. They were out a full 30 days, and they came back, and their orders and so forth they're receiving have come back pretty strongly. So are China and Korea ultimately going to do a better job than America at this? That's a big question.
All right, Mark Penn, Chairman of Harris Poll, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.